Been a while.
Dodge, how you doing, sir?
Hey, nice
Good to see you. Thank you. You too.
Now that we have a quorum.
Carol's on her way.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Say what?
Tomorrow morning. Yeah. No. Tomorrow morning. It's too crappy tonight.
One of them, Dodge doesn't have his iPad.
You have the motion.
I can't get out of this.
Do they have to mention the amendment to the motion? There's no amendment. There was a typo in the ordinance that was provided in the packet where it said this read licensed video game. Yeah, so we just corrected it in the copy of the ordinance that's before the board and that will be adopted. So it doesn't change anything else? No.
Are you canceling that January? How? That would be up to. I think that's, yeah. That's a good question.
Who's lost my name? I mean, your sister.
What's your personal?
That's the person. Hey, Joe. Joe.
Yeah.
Pretty disappointed.
Hi, I'm Jason Geisinger. I'm filling in for Ken
Oh,
tonight.
yeah, okay, Jason.
Good to see you. Yes, we've met a couple of times.
So,
Yeah, that's all in the ordinance, that this is an advisory referendum, yes, and we reference the provisions of the Illinois Election Code that authorizes the village board to put a non-binding advisory referendum. Yep.
yeah, it does. In downtown,
I saw. I'm waiting.
traffic.
Sure. I was here.
Don't give me that sure. You work here. I don't. and you know he's not.
What's that?
You know Mike's.
I know he's not coming. We talked about that last week. Should we all just hide underneath the table? Call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Here.
Trustee Dodge?
Here.
Trustee Guerra?
Here.
Trustee Ruzick?
Here.
Trustee Calandrella?
Here.
Trustee Carroll? Mayor Peacock?
Here.
Please rise for the pledge.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Orland Park the question of whether the village should approve and license video gaming within the village with certain conditions.
Before entertaining a motion, we do have two people that want to speak here tonight. And just as a heads up to anyone who wants to speak, what we're discussing here, we're not discussing video gaming as a whole. We're simply talking about a referendum on the ballot. So if you still want to come up and speak, feel free. Otherwise, there will still be a special meeting on January 8th, and that you can air your concerns or voice your opinion there as well. Yes, sir.
I would speak against referendum, so.
Okay. Tim McCarthy.
My name is Tim McCarthy. I'm a resident for 47 years. I'm here this evening representing the 10 family businesses in town. We have participated in both meetings at the village with much information. We provided facts. We provided input into those meetings, and we thought it was quite positive. This whole issue has pretty much turned into the ridiculous in certain ways. This could be resolved by a simple vote of the board. Excuse me. The village clerk began the facade by introducing his own accord a standing ordinance on 11/7 right in this room. Now, it's my belief that that action was clearly an attempt by the clerk to further his own personal political gain. Some might call that official misconduct. Then starts a misleading petition for some reason to further that interest. Then outside gaming interest sends us the church lady preaching damnation in hell. She turns out to be a Jezebel, probably employed by Loretto Hospitality, which is in charge of gaming in our surrounding communities. In other words, they don't want us to have it because they're making all the money off of us. Now, our Jezebel is not here tonight, thank God. We're talking about a referendum. The village has planned a referendum for waste management and a sports complex. Both of those issues cost the taxpayers money. Video gaming does not cost the taxpayers money. Actually, it brings you money. The village has projected a loss of sales tax revenue that we all understand, and also a $10 million deficit in fiscal year 2018. We're not going to make that $10 million up in bake sales. We provided all the facts to all the people interested. Not one piece of evidence was presented at either those meetings or in this room that showed that this issue would have a negative effect on the integrity, character of our community, increase in crime, or other hell and brimstone effect. I'm being tired of being played. I'm being played here, whether politically or by gaming interests outside our community. I hope you are tired of it too. I ask the board do its job and conduct a vote on this ordinance, which is in progress, with the restrictions, which are quite restrictive, by the way, and be done with this. Thank you for your time. There's no need for a referendum.
Thank you. William Pappas.
Good evening, Mayor Peacock and elected Board of Trustees. My name is Bill Pappas. I have called Orland Park my hometown for 30 years. I'm owner of Coach's Corner Bar and Grill here in Orland. I also work for Excel Entertainment, provider of legalized video gaming and amusement-related services to the state of Illinois. I am obviously here to ask you to opt into video gaming. I ask you all to take a stand against the hypocritical, anti-gaming people and opt into video gaming and not allow this issue to be decided by referendum. But I am also here to touch on a few other issues since this issue has come to fruition. To start, I would like to address the fake news from the anti-gaming critics. 1. Excel Entertainment, the company that my father, Mike Pappas, and I work for, have 28,000 VGTs across the state of Illinois. Fake news. Real news. This is the figure for the amount of VGTs across the whole state of Illinois. Allowing video gaming in Orland Park will bring higher crime rates. Fake news. Our very own Chief McCarthy, has reported back to us that neighboring towns have not seen higher rates relating to legalized video gaming. Excel Entertainment will replace the board with their own people once gaming is allowed in Orland Park. Again, fake news. Real news. Mike Pappas, who is in charge of governmental relations, has worked with various townships. One town in particular, New Lenox, working with Mayor Balderman, wanted a slow rollout of gaming to establishments throughout New Lenox, and Mike helped the mayor achieve this through the ordinance New Lenox had passed. 4, businesses can make enough money with good food and services. Sorry to say, that's fake news. Real news. Small family businesses in Orland Park are suffering and cannot compete against 1, corporate franchises, or 2, our fellow family-owned small businesses in other surrounding communities. We, the small family local businesses, are here asking for video gaming to help level the playing field throughout. 5, it's only $400K to the township. Fake news. Real news. When did $400K only become $400,000? Don't forget, this figure doesn't include the annual fee to the establishments has to pay to the village to have legalized video gaming within their establishments. 6,
1 minute.
sign this petition so the board doesn't vote down video gaming. Fake news. This is how the anti-gambling people secured signatures for their petition for a referendum. Why are they misrepresenting themselves? To put the cherry on top of this issue, Kathy Gilroy, active anti-gaming gambling spokesperson, speaker at both gaming meetings in Orland, was the focus in today's Tribune article. If you haven't heard or seen, she was the winner of a $25,000 raffle at a gaming cafe. How does one speak against gambling, but then participates in gambling or sweepstakes activity? Don't make excuses to validate your own actions. That is hypocritical. You can't eat your cake and have it too. It just doesn't work that way. To conclude, you elected officials have done a great job putting together a very restrictive video gaming ordinance draft. To let the hypocrites persuade you and fall victim to yet another referendum is absurd. Please take a stand. We of Orland Park have elected you 7 to make the tough decision. We trust that you can. Thank you so much for your time, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Sure.
My name is Dave Hutter. I've been in the town of Orland for 40 years. My kids grew up here. It was a nice small town when we arrived here, and it's grown nicely, and it's grown without gambling. And I think as far as my family goes, my grandchildren, I take them to a lot of restaurants. We just got probably $200 worth of gift cards for the restaurants in Orland Park. I will not take them into a restaurant with gambling. It sends the wrong message to my grandkids, my kids. That's not the kind of life that I want them to even do for entertainment. And as far as I'm concerned, that there's nothing to be wrong with a referendum for you folks to know what percentage of people in Orland Park want gambling in their town versus not. I don't know what the restaurants are afraid of, but evidently they don't want to know what the people want. They may want to know what our trustees want, and I respect all you trustees, but it's a piece of information that I think is good for the town. And I'm just a small little old resident guy here. I don't have any restaurants, but I just thought I would tell you my feelings on it. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, one.
Come on up.
Evening, Mayor and trustees. I am part of the anti-gambling position on this matter, and with all due respect to Mr. McCarthy, I'll be happy to provide him with some substantive data, amongst which includes a study that I have with me, and I'll be happy to provide this with you, from the University of Illinois economists that cite the increase in crime around to Chicago, where they associate it with statistical significance resulting from the video gambling that has been approved in the adjacent neighboring suburbs. But that's not the purpose of knowing that I only have a limited amount of time. I just wanted to, I have a question for you, Mr. Mayor, and for any of the trustees. I reviewed the proposed question that you now wish to place on the March ballot alongside the people's question, which got there by their mandate, 2,100 signatures plus. On several occasions, you yourself have stated that you oppose that this issue/ordinance be decided via referendum, and trustees Dodge and Carroll were equally vocal in that regard. Now you intend to place a question on the ballot alongside the people's question, but with baseless conditions that infer a favorable bias on the issue. Is it your intent to confuse the voter once they're in the ballot kiosk? I myself am confused as to its utility. My second question in that regard is, wouldn't you have to change your position where you've stated several times that you can't pick winners and losers by adding those conditions as stated in the revised ordinance, your proposed question? You make it very clear that you will be picking winners and losers. So which side? I appreciate your clarification. Thank you.
I would be happy to clarify. The ordinance that is under discussion right now is the same ordinance that's been under discussion since day one, despite your attempts to paint it as otherwise. Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Do we, wait 1 second. Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Dodge.
Move to pass, this is to get the conversation started amongst the board.
Correct.
Move the ordinance number, please.
5262.
Move to pass ordinance 5262 entitled Ordinance Providing for the Submission of the Electors of the Village of Orland Park, the question of whether the village should approve and license video gaming within the village with certain conditions.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I guess I'll start.
Trustee Guerra?
All right. We have talked about this for some time. My impression was this wasn't going to happen this soon. I really was rather hoping if it was going to be a referendum, it would be in the November election. Then things happened, and petitions were circulated, and that's fine, and I don't know how many board members knew that was going on. I think it was maybe done too quickly without more discussion among the whole board so that we'd have a consensus if we were going to a referendum, and if we were, what the wording would be. That didn't happen. So here we are, and there's one that, as Mr. Mulvey pointed out, is the people's. The other alternative referendum issue or statement mentions signage. Signage is very particular because we understand it's difficult standing in court. It gets pulled under freedom of speech. Our signage ordinance, as far as I know forever, has prohibited neon, flashing lights, all of the electronic lights. We don't allow that in town. So the only addition it really, to me, is clear is that current signage ordinances will apply. That's all it says. I don't think it's tilted in any way at all. It's just saying, since this is a new category of business, it's not a furniture store, it's not a pharmacy, it's not that type, it's a whole new category. But that category too would have to follow the same ordinances in terms of signage. I think it's clear. I think it's explains more on behalf of the businesses as well, gives them more of a fair shake. And as Mrs. Shander, I believe it is, sent us all an email today. And what she said was, she's been here a long time, I've been here a very long time, is the position to, or the responsibility to inform our population, our residents, of what the issue is and explain it to them is ours, and then let them choose. And I think that's fair. So I think it's this board's responsibility to make sure the information, clear, honest information, not tilted the other way either, neither way, and let the residents decide, because it's an important issue. I don't know if it would change the future of the village. I don't know. I don't have my crystal ball with me, but I think it's important that the residents be allowed to weigh in on this. There you have it.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calangelo.
I'll just be brief. The Orland Park residents took this in their own hands, and more than 2,100 residents got signatures to put this on the ballot as a referendum question. We can't change that. That's going to happen. No matter what we do here today, there's going to be a referendum question. I think everyone that spoke today said they don't want this to be a referendum question, so why are we adding additional questions? And we're talking about placing this on the ballot, like I talked about, and it's going to have conflicting answers. So so if your opinion is anti-gaming, you have to say yes, no, and the reverse. That's confusing. I think we all who wanted this as a referendum, or people who want this referendum, we want to have a clear opinion stated by the residents. And I just think adding another referendum will do that, is add confusion. So we can't affect the outcome of this going to be a referendum. That's decided by the residents to put it on. So we really can't do anything here. All we can do is just confuse more people. Do I wish the wording was a little better? Probably. But that was also the state provided language. So, however, we're stuck with it. It wasn't challenged, which before we called this meeting, there was rumors that this was going to be challenged, and that's why I attended today and why I thought we had needed a discussion. But it wasn't challenged. We're stuck with the language because the citizens told us we're stuck with the language, and they got the 2,100 signatures, and that's how I'm going to base my vote.
Mr. Mayor.
Trustee Ruzick.
So my problem with, and I haven't seen the wording of the people's question in a while, but my problem with it, and I've spoken with Mr. Mahalik about this, was that it asked, should the village ban video gambling? And we already have that ban in place. So to me, and I said this from day one when I heard about it, that question didn't make as much sense to me as a question that was perhaps more fair and balanced. If there was a referendum that said, should we allow liquor sales in Orland Park on Sundays, would anyone not think that referendum question was confusing? Of course it is. We already allow it. So for me, I'm going to vote in favor of this just because I want the issue clarified, and I intend to follow the results of that referendum.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenn.
I agree with Trustee Ruzick. It was very sad that the first referendum is out there. There was a lot of misinformation. This board was not involved in it, and that's a very sad situation. And with the misinformation and the way the wording was, we really didn't have a choice. So the referendum that's being put out there is, it's fair, and the wording is very clear. And I think it's going to be easier for the residents to understand what the intention of the board was. And, my thing is, it's all about those small businesses, because that's what America was built on, was small businesses. So.
Mayor Pico.
Trustee Dodge.
I think I was one of the ones who's, I'm not generally in favor of voter referendums. But this is now happening under an extraordinary set of circumstances. And, quite frankly, and I'll be quite blunt in my comments with the leave of the board, we were going through a normal deliberative process on a contentious issue when it was made overtly political. Overtly political. And what my frustration is, when we did rather big things in the past, we had a deliberative process. We talked about it as a board. The title is trustee, by the way. And we took it through, and we got feedback from our residents, and we thought it through, and we thought about the best interests of Orland Park, and we put together a policy. We were working on that policy when, in my opinion, and with the information that I have, this became overtly political for future use. Okay? Now I have a constrained set of choices, don't I? I can try and talk this board into a unified message clarifying what we were or were not proposing to do, to, if you will, share better information with the citizens referendum, or take this, an extraordinary step under conditions I don't particularly like operating under, to then clarify what we were doing and put that before the voters. So this is not a great way to make public policy, but I'll remind everybody here that we didn't do it with 9750. We didn't do it with other big contentious issues, like when we changed the compensation for the mayor in exchange to have full-time focus on economic development. We made a decision as a board. We looked at the best interests and we got off of it. So I'm going to say this one more time. This question, do we or do we not allow video gaming in the Village of Orland Park under what is shaping up to be, I think, literally the most restrictive ordinance in the entire state of Illinois to protect our town and what we've built and what we all do and don't want to see? Well, that process was corrupted by an overt political move. And to this day, I still don't know what that citizens referendum says, because I'm not quite sure if it's mandatory under state of Illinois law, but I was never notified by anybody in the clerk's office it was filed. That would have been a pleasant courtesy. Back in my day, when I was the clerk, I would never have dreamed of putting the full board in a position like this for an open question of public policy without making it known in other ways, okay? Here we are. So what do? Do we debate an information campaign to say, this is what we're proposing, this is what we're not proposing, and let it be? Do we take a hard decision? Do we put in a sunset provision? Do we put in more constraints? Well, all that's sort of now been maybe coming to a halt, because I think there's some members, and truth be told, I mean, it's not a bad position, saying, let's wait, let's see what the voter referendum is, okay? So as I see it, my only choice is to take a step I don't particularly like, where I have to reverse a long-standing policy to clarify an issue of public importance and put it out there and put an information campaign to say what it is and what it isn't. So that's where I'm at on this.
Are there any other comments? Okay, I have a few comments, and mine won't be particularly brief because I will explain why I'm voting the way that I am. But the irony is that we are here tonight because the deliberative process was hijacked. The village board, as pointed out, was having very preliminary discussions that were accelerated significantly due to those actions. Personally, my observation on referendums here in Illinois is that they are rarely put on the ballot in the interest of the people, but instead are political tools to try to drive behavior and stir emotion over divisive issues. There are several arguments for the use of referendums. One of those is that referendums complement democracy and are popular with voters. Yeah, they're very popular right now, usually from the groups of people who don't like a particular outcome or are afraid a vote may not go their way. Referendums are the first best form of democracy. However, we are a representative republic. We can go back to the framers of the Constitution that created two bodies in Congress, where James Madison said that the Senate's role was to first protect the people against their rulers, secondly, to protect the people against the transient impressions into which they themselves might be led. This is why only 1/3 of the Senate is elected every 2 years. In the context of increasing voter apathy, direct democracy can help to re-engage voters with politics and democracy. This is another critical reason for referendums. However, they may be popular, but they don't drive turnout. Arguably, our biggest referendum item was the open lands referendum in 2000. However, there were over 4,000 less votes cast on the referendum than there were for President of the United States in that particular election. The most recent election, we've heard about the waste management fees and the ball fields. those referendums received 5 to 10% less votes than did the votes cast for village president. Another common reason for this is to promote voter education. Well, this doesn't happen when they're given false information. We know anecdotally that this happened during signature collection. People were told we were putting in video cafes, that there'd be neon signs everywhere, that the only way to get gaming is to sign the referendum. We've heard in 2 meetings that I pushed this forward as the mayor, and nothing could be further from the truth, and everyone on this board floor would acknowledge that that's the case. My question is, why would someone be against a referendum that reflects what we're really voting on and wants a referendum that doesn't reflect anything like what we're voting on? To me, that's misinformation. Like Trustee Dodge, I'm generally against referendums for several reasons. I think it undermines representative democracy by undermining the role and importance of elected representatives. This is exactly what is happening here. Someone who is not a trustee did something unprecedented and put the ordinance on the agenda, then left the dais to speak as a citizen after putting the item on the agenda. This was another first for all of us on this board floor. This intentionally undermined the deliberative body that was duly elected by the citizens of Orland Park. Referendums can also be seen as a means available to elected representatives to avoid having to take an unpopular position on a controversial issue. This is exactly what's happening tonight. Referendums are a tactical device used by politicians. This is commonly used in Illinois and currently is being used. How else do you explain the fact that the village board, the mayor, and the village manager have yet to be officially notified of the referendum that was filed sometime last week? It is this kind of political maneuvering that we've come to expect from Springfield and Washington, and it has no place here in Orland Park. Referendums also fail to deal with complex issues. While a referendum typically asks voters to check a simple yes or no, it is actually one of the most complicated forms of voting. The policy issues at stake are complex. The wording of the question on the ballot is often technical. During the campaign, voters are going to be bombarded with information from political players and advocacy groups they have never heard of. There is a reason why you hear, "If you don't know, vote no," as a common slogan in these referendum campaigns. Referendums also tend not to be about the issue in question and more about politics. What do we have here? Why was it pushed forward in an unprecedented way? Why the personal attacks? And why is the board yet to be officially informed of a referendum that was filed? Those are all valid questions that look more political than actually about the referendum. However, with all of this said, we know that several people collected signatures for the referendum. We know that some of the signatures were collected using questionable tactics. We also are aware that the ballot question that these signatures were collected for does not remotely represent the question being deliberated by the village board. So the question for all of us becomes, how do we acknowledge the efforts of well-meaning signature collectors who are passionate about the issue, while at the same time recognize that the ballot question does not represent what we are deliberating, and acknowledge that some citizens who signed the referendum now feel like they were duped? Since all of these referendums are advisory, we could choose to ignore it. However, several board members don't want to ignore it, and I understand that position. So alternatively, we could put a proper referendum on the ballot which doesn't ignore the position of those that signed this referendum and were properly informed and feel strongly about their position. And there are plenty of people that feel strongly against gaming. It ensures that all the voters are given an accurate referendum to vote on. Who can be against accuracy? Third, it's more likely to give us better feedback from the electorate. Though the result is highly unlikely to represent a majority of voters, and the referendum is advisory, our last election had 25% turnout. So we will be basing our decision potentially on only a quarter of the people in Orland Park. However, for all of these reasons, I think the best option forward that we have will be to put this referendum on the ballot, and I will vote for it. But I still hold the position that referendums should be saved for massive massive bond issues, and more importantly, for form of government changes and or issues that directly impact the village board members, like term limits. The village board was elected to put politics aside and deliberate these issues and do what we believe is in the best interest of the people. And I commend all of the trustees sitting up here for doing exactly that on this issue, because the village board did work exactly the way we're supposed to on this. And with that, you can call the roll.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Guerra?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Ruzick?
Aye.
Trustee Calgill?
No.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. The motion passes 5-1. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
You second it?
Trustee Guerra seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The meeting is adjourned.